To introduce our next guest speaker, of course, there will be somebody, of course, from the officers of the NREA who will introduce it. Let's all welcome the NREA Vice President for Internal Affairs, Mr. Jovi Tupaz.
Again, thank you very much, Mr. Dennis Sumo, President of our Bulacan chapter. Good morning, everyone again. Our next guest speaker graduated with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, major in pollution control from the United States Air Force Academy, and commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Philippine Air Force in 1974. He has an extensive background in aviation to include aircraft maintenance, to his designation as Logistics Management Officer for Foreign Military Sales in the Office of the Deputy Chief of Staff for Logistics of the AFP before resigning to join Philippine Air Lines. He joined Saudi Arabian Airlines based in Jeddah for 3 years and then served 6 years as a tribal missionary pastor in Mindanao upon his return to the country. He rejoined the Philippine Airlines until appointed by President Duterte as one of the governors in the Board of Investments. Our honored guest completed his master's degree in public management from the University of the Philippines in 1983. In addition to his board duties, he also serves and performs the following: currently the oversight governor for the Comprehensive Automotive Resurgence Strategy to increase localization of parts for the car manufacturing industry. During the early stages of the pandemic, he also co-founded the Data Science para sa Bayan initiative to build a cloud-based computing platform for big data analytics utilizing machine learning, AI, and the Internet of Things as a common resource. He is also working with DOST to provide connectivity to remote areas by attracting investors in TV, white space, and satellite communications technologies. Finding ways to attract energy efficiency service providers is also an area of his concern. Currently, developing the ecosystem to produce food-grade, industrial-grade, and polymer-grade lactic acid for food processing, pharmaceuticals, and compostables together with UP, DOST, and the industry. He co-authored a study funded by the Philippine Center for Population and Development in collaboration with the Davao Association Colleges and Universities entitled Housing for the Poor, the San Pasada Experience. He is currently the chairman of the Tribal Missions Foundation International Incorporated, to mobilize indigenous people-led movements towards a holistic community development, and chairman of the UP Alumni Association Davao Chapter. Let us all welcome, and it is with great pride, and thank you for being here with us to celebrate NREA's 30th anniversary, none other than Philippine Board of Investments Governor, Mr. Napoleon Concepcion. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everyone. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. And if I may, I'd like to share my screen. I hope you're seeing it all right.
Yes, sir, we're seeing it. Actually, sir, we're seeing the presenter view.
So wait a minute. Presenter view ang nasa inyo?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, if you like, sir, what you can do is you can stop share screen and then share screen using yung other option, the one in the middle, yung advanced option. You can share a portion of the screen.
Advanced option, and then
portion of the screen.
Portion of the screen. Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Sir, you can see your merong green na box. You can
Yeah.
adjust the green box so that we can only see your slide. So at the same time, you can also see your notes.
Okay. See. See. Let me explain. I could do this before until I updated to Windows 11.
Yes, sir. Windows 11 just updated fairly.
Yeah. So I would like to say na parang tayo muna, nagkamali yata ako. I should have done it after this presentation.
And sir, we can see it perfectly right now.
Okay, what can you see?
Okay.
We can
Okay.
see just your slide, sir.
All right, thank you very
Perfect.
much. At least I learned something new today. And I hope that you will also learn something from this presentation. Okay, let me start from the beginning. It is my distinct pleasure to be a part of the 30th founding anniversary of the National Real Estate Association of the Philippines. At the same time, extremely privileged to share the stage with very distinguished, illustrious, magkukulang ang adjectives ko, guest headed by our former President, Honorable Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Then, of course, we have Secretary Ed Belisario of the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, which we now know as DSUD. And I would also like to congratulate particularly the men and women of NREA, especially Chairman Benny Cabreto, who happens to be my classmate from the Academy, and Vice Chair Ricky Celis and Ms. Imelda Magtoto, the President, for NREA's 30 years of service to the nation. The BOI has always been advocating for a more granular menu of incentives. We learned through the years. I think I skipped a slide. My presentation is entitled Mass Housing Development and Create Act. In the discussion, however, I feel it relevant to cover certain provisions of Executive Order 226, from which the Board of Investments draws its mandate, particularly the 2020 IPP, which was signed on November 2020 by the President and now provides the segue into the SIPP under CREATE. Republic Act 11534, better known as the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, was signed into law by President Duterte on 26 March, took effect on 11 April. The implementing rules and regulations came out on 26 June, and we are expecting the Strategic Investment Priority Plan, or SIPP, a key ingredient of CREATE, to be released soon, maybe before the end of the month. That's how quickly the government has moved in getting the CREATE law passed. Now, the BOI had always been advocating for a more granular menu of incentives. We learned through the years that some investors still reported net losses despite of the positive evaluation for its business model. In effect, the promise of income tax holidays did not offset the risks taken for using pioneering technologies, facing locational challenges like lack of infrastructure, peace, and order. Some issues were addressed by the administration's successes under the Build, Build, Build program. The improved connectivity through common towers and entry of a third telco. All of this has brought us closer to one another, thus eliminating locational restrictions. However, for the housing sector, we had to retain provisions limiting construction of housing properties in the Metro Manila or NCR region. This is because of the Balik Probinsya program. We have to disperse or decongest the NCR and move activities into the provinces. The much improved peace and order situation through modernizing, upgrading the capability of the AFP and the PNP in dealing with organized crime also obviates the label of conflict areas from the list of preferred areas of investments. In the 2020 IPP and all the IPPs before, there were additional incentives given to industrial activities located in least developed areas and conflict areas. Developments in our peace and order situation and the Build program thus makes it unnecessary to set special preferences for activities located outside of Metro Manila. Lastly, to be competitive as an investment haven, reduce the corporate income taxes from 30 to 25%. And for companies earning less than 5 million with total assets not exceeding 100 million pesos, the corporate income tax was reduced to 20%. Thus created an inclusive, innovative, and industrial development environment for the country. Although the Board of Investment is often mistaken as the Board of Incentives, BOI din naman, let it be known that we are also the leading industry development agency in support of the inclusive innovation industrial strategy of the Department of Trade and Industry. Our overall goal is to create a better future for Filipinos in the Philippines by developing industries and attracting investments that will create jobs, foster innovation, and improve the competitiveness of the local industries as it responds to the needs of the global market. Our strategic objectives include a progressive, sustainable trade deficit reduction program through import substitution and consumption efficiency, value creation to make higher value products from our indigenous resources by sharing opportunities, global value integration. The Board of Investment creates enabling pathways for stakeholders in our local supply chains to gain access to global value chains. And lastly, social contribution to promote inclusivity and impact investments to make the bottom of the pyramid partners for progress. Some initiatives we do to support industry development include on the screen, investing or advocating for the establishment of support facilities and infrastructure, empowering local industries, and investing in human capital development through capacity building or training activities. Coordinating with relevant agencies or institutions to facilitate the setup of businesses and address specific concerns on the business environment. And lastly, promoting trade and policy and investment policies in the country through hosting or participating in regional and international events. And lastly, formulating or advocating for needed policies and regulations to include our support for CREATE. CREATE provides a single menu of incentives for both BOI and PEZA registered enterprises. Well, as before, there are different set of offerings for BOI and PEZA registered enterprises. Now there's a single menu for all investments. All applications for registration projects with investments exceeding 1 billion will, however, require the final nod of the Fiscal Incentive Review Board, co-chaired by the Secretary of Finance and the Secretary of the Department of Trade. The incentives, as you may see, are basically the same. However, we have added non-fiscal incentives like accelerated depreciation, labor expense. If you hire more, you probably will give you more deductions from your expense. You can add additional, I think it's a 50% deduction. For research and development, I think it's given now an additional 100%. So all in all, you get 200% deduction from your expense account. Reinvestment, allowances of local materials, additional power expense. That had to be put there because one of the hurdles that one of the criticisms that foreign investors have about our country is the high power cost. So we had to put this additional power expense. I think they were given 150%, an additional 50% deduction for power. And net operating loss, which we enhanced or increased under CREATE. To qualify for any incentive package, the activity needs to fall under a Philippine standard for industry classification number, which is currently being worked out by the investment promoting agencies as provided under CREATE. Dati-rati po, we just had to list down the investment priority plan with the preferred activities. However, it was found desirable to have specific industries sorted out according to their Philippine Standard Industry Classification. So parang it was not designed to limit but to clearly identify for the sake of accounting para po sa ating Department of Finance and the BIR. We had to come to the level of identifying each item clearly. The SIPP is a plan that will be prepared by the Board of Investment in coordination with the Fiscal Incentive Review Board and the investment promoting agencies and other government agencies administering tax incentives and the private sector. Just like the investment priority plan, which most of you are familiar with under EO 226, the SIPP will be subject to the approval of the President after a thorough review and deliberation of said agencies through a steering committee after subjecting the same to a public consultation. Magkakasama po tayong lahat sa pag-clarify or identify ng mga preferred investment activities under sa CREATE. The SIPP, as I've said, will use the PSIC to determine whether the activity qualifies for incentives, the scope and coverage of the location and industry tiers, and then recommendations for non-fiscal support. So, importante po to be able to identify where under the SIPP do we clearly fall. If you will see on the screen right now, you have the SIPP parameters. This is under Section 300 of the CREATE Law and Section 4 of the IRR. It provides 10 criteria to determine the inclusion or listing of an activity in the SIPP. Any of the following 10 parameters, hindi po kailangan you have to satisfy 1 and 2. Any lang, if you can meet 1, you are covered, or you may avail of the incentives that is offered under CREATE. Let's just go through this chart or this slide. I will not go one by one, but just to explain, for example, you have a substantial amount of investment. For example, you bring an investment of about 1.5 billion. Malaki pong tulong yon. So maybe by the size of the investment alone, the project can also already be qualified for incentives. Considerable generation of employment. If you will hire 100 employees on the first year, but on the 5th year, you will be hiring 1,000 employees, definitely we will consider your application for registration under CREATE. Considerable amount of net exports. If you will export 70% of your production, we can consider giving incentives to your activity, and so forth and so on. So you can just go through the line and identify whether you fall under any of these parameters. This is in addition to the filter that is going to be used under PSIC, using PSIC. Under the FIRB resolution number 521, the FIRB agreed that the recently approved IPP for 2020, which is good for 3 years, may be considered as the transition IPP until such time that the SIPP is formulated. So, bale, bagong approve po ni Presidente ang 2020 IPP, and the commitment is to release the SIPP by November. In that interim period, we will use the provisions or the terms and conditions under the IPP, the approved IPP. Those projects registered under the 2020 IPP shall, however, continue to enjoy the incentives as stipulated in their BOI registrations, terms and conditions. So whatever benefits you receive in an activity under the 2020 IPP before the SIPP is implemented, all of those will be it will be considered as valid or still in effect. Now, this is the list of, just to give you an understanding of the 2020 IPP. Consistent with the administration's thrust on 0+10-point socioeconomic agenda and Filipinos' aspiration in Ambition Natin 2040, the IPP was approved in November of 2020. It was published or took effect only in February of this year. The 2020, however, was basically designed as a reboot strategy. If you will recall, we had the Taal volcano eruption in January of 2020, and then it was followed by COVID in March of 2020. So the 2020 IPP was therefore carved out in order to reboot the economy. Therefore, it's quite different from the other IPPs. It was designed to combat the effects of the pandemic, accelerate a V-shaped recovery, kasi lahat po ng business ay nag-drop pero we cannot take too long to climb back up again. So we wanted an accelerated V-shaped recovery towards a more industrial, innovation-driven, and inclusive Philippine economy. And that's actually what we are trying to do now under CREATE. And serves as the 2020 IPP serves as the foundation to facilitate a smooth transition towards a more relevant and responsive incentive regime. So if you will look at the screen, you have COVID-19 response activities. That's the production of face masks, PPEs, and then we considered reconfiguring of factories. We have the Balik Probinsya program, which was approved during the pandemic time, and we were trying to move people away from the urban centers where there is a heavy concentration of cases. So that's included there. And then if you will see, mass housing is it's in red, because in support of the Balik Probinsya program, if you're going to move people from the cities to the remote areas, we need to provide housing for them. So definitely, ang ating pong produkto, providing housing, affordable, accessible housing, not only for the poor, for the low-income families, definitely po kasama po na kayo sa isipan ng Board of Investment at ng ating pamahalaan. So, as approved by the FIRB, the 2020 IPP will be used during the transition period until the SIPP has been approved and published. These are the housing-related activities that are in the 2020 IPP that are qualified for create incentives. I just merely cleaned up yung listahan. So what you have is development of economic and low-cost housing. There's no change at all, basically, except for the added content is in-city dwellings. We are now promoting construction for lease and for rent. If you remember, matagal po naming yung mga nagpapatayo po ng mga high-rise facilities. Ang insistence po natin dati is to for the saleable units po ang kino-consider natin under the old 2017 IPP. But under the 2020 IPP, pumayag na po if the units in your condos will be for lease or for rent, pumapayag na po. However, there's some hesitancy from the sector itself, from the industry sector itself, kasi sabi nga po nila sa amin, we will just wait until the rental law is repealed or revised or amended. So we're all waiting for that. However, we can continue to still collaborate with one another because now we're looking at the workers' dormitories, which became popular during the pandemic in Singapore, where the workers' dormitories were affected. So we were thinking maybe that's one way of building for facilities, housing facilities for our workers in urban centers. Manufacture of modular housing components. The manufacture of modular components provided incentives in the past 5 years. The DTI has increased support for MSMEs under its Inclusive Innovation Industrial Strategy. Inclusivity starts with small ideas in partnership with communities. Pati po paggawa ng hollow blocks, if it's a innovative way, it's a faster way of building stronger hollow blocks, pwede pong i-consider natin yun. Not just hollow blocks, yung mga modular panels po for construction. We can talk more about it if you drop by our office, and let's see how we can help you mitigate some of the risks that you will be taking, just in case you enter into some in case you want to go into some innovative strategy of accelerating construction of houses in the country. However, there's a specific requirement that it must be high-tech certified. So come to our office for any questions you might have. Activities, as I've already covered this in line with Balik Probinsya, they are now they are considered as part of the IPP. And then environment or climate change related projects like installation of solar panels. There's a company that came to us with a proposal for integrated na po ang solar panels sa bubong ng mga bahay. And I think that happened 2019. So any innovative way of bringing down or part of our supporting the initiative, the global initiative for climate change, welcome po, pwede pong pag-usapan, and then of course we can always consult. If we have any doubts, we can always contact our colleagues at the Department of Energy. So to provide the summary of policies adopted for BOI registered enterprises, last year po, we allowed deferment or suspension of the ITH. Bale, if you have 4 years ITH and then during 2020, hindi po practical or feasible or hindi maganda ang numbers, you can defer it for 1 year until such time makarecover ang ating economy. So, but for the period that has been deferred, kailangan po pa rin magbayad ng tax, and then you can avail of the ITH the following year. That's an option that you might have, that you might want to use. The other one is 1-year extension period on compliance requirement. We have balik-balik po mga request kung pwedeng bigyan sila ng extra time for compliance kasi mahirap kumuha ng mga clearances, maraming lockdowns and so forth and so on. Pumayag po kami that you have 1-year extension for your applications. One item that's I'd like to update you is, alam po naman ninyo kasi we do everything in consultation with you, we were already considering escrow arrangement with DSUD. However, due to recent developments, we are going back to the drawing table and further discussing the issue of escrow arrangements with DSUD. I was told that there will be no question and answer part for this session, so I would like to invite you to get in touch with us for any of your concerns. Patuloy naman po tayong nagmi-meeting, online meetings, lahat po, NREA, Jeddah, patuloy po ang ating conversation. And it's just a pleasure for me to be invited once more to join this anniversary. How I wish it could be a face-to-face meeting kasi masarap ang pagkain pag NREA. Anyway, if you have any questions, patuloy tayo online. You can visit us, www.philippinesbusiness.business. And then you can contact us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So, yun po, let us not allow this pandemic to hold us back. There's so many ways for us to collaborate and move our economy, move this nation forward. So again, maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.